Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor, Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
And me, Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair. This recording takes place live at Biblioasis bookshop in Windsor. You'll hear Biblioasis publicist Theo Hummer introducing each author. First up is Vancouver-born and Toronto-based Stan Rogal reading from Investigation into the Death of Roberto Bolaño. And then you'll hear Windsor-born and now Toronto-based author Michael Januska reading from Prospect Avenue. After the readings, there's an insightful Q&A moderated by Theo. A big thank you to Biblioasis for allowing us to record at the bookshop.
Quite a prolific writer. He's the author of 12 collections of poetry, 7 short story collections, and 5 novels, of which we have 3 for sale here tonight, and he will be signing after. Tonight he's going to read to us from his latest, The Investigation into the Death of Roberto Bolaño. So without further ado.
Thanks. So the novel, Investigation into the Death of Roberto Bolaño, for those of you who don't know Roberto Bolaño, not familiar with his work, that's okay. If you do know him and realize that he's a real person, you'll get a few more associations out of the novel. If you don't know him, I'm treating him as a fictional character. So anything you need to know, if you decide to buy the book, is in the novel. And you can always go to Google later, because Google knows everything, and check it out. There's also a bit of a biography in here. The funny thing about Bolaño, or maybe it's not funny for you, but it was funny for me, he created a lot of factual information about himself that wasn't actually factual, created a lot of different identities for himself within the books that he wrote. A lot of it was sort of autobiographical, but fictional, because he would create these fictional characters. So I was trying to use that in this book. He wrote a lot about detectives, a lot about redheads, a lot about hunchbacks. So that's in this book. He liked American film, so that's in this book. So yes, it's a mystery night. There is a detective in this novel, and there's also a bit of Hollywood going on, because within this small novel, there is the Hollywood version of the story in the novel, which also gets talked about in the book. So it's on, kind of, not to make it sound too pretentious or anything like that, but there's a few levels that are going on that I was trying to play with in the spirit of Roberto Bolaño. What it says about this book is that it's a film noirish type novel, and Roberto Bolaño, in his real life, in quotes, as we like to say, was born in Chile. He was a poet. He was fed up with the Chilean politics, fed up with the literature in Chile, and decided that the best thing to do was to leave. So at the age of 23, he moved to Spain. And when he was in Spain, he began writing fiction. He was more of a poet before then. Started writing fiction, started winning some awards, and he became famous in Spain. So my book takes, and he was suffering from a liver disease, and he needed a transplant. And before he was able to get the transplant, he died at age 50. And his book, The Savage Detectives, his most, I guess, famous novel and won all the major prizes, would have been 20 years old last year. So this is like the 21st anniversary of Savage Detectives. And that's talked about a bit in this book as well. So Chile, he kind of went, fuck you, I'm out of here. So what I've done now is that Chile has decided, now that he's dead, we're going to make him a national hero. We're going to celebrate his life, celebrate his work, name a street after him, put his image on a stamp, whatever. But they get an anonymous tip that, in fact, Roberto Bolaño may not be dead. And their concern is that he may just show up and piss on their parade. So they go to the local authorities and say, look, go out there and make sure this guy is dead. And they put it that way, so it's like kind of open to interpretation, right? Make sure he's dead. So what we have now is the detective who really doesn't want this project because he figures it's a waste of time, but has to take it because he's been told to. And he's in his office and he's kind of looking at the material in front of him. And I'll read part of that here. Oh, I should also, because we live in a sensitive age, here's the warning. Contains strong language, scenes of an explicit nature, gratuitous sex and violence, full frontal nudity, cigarette and drug use,
Okay.
poetry,
Best.
very scary,
George
and a
Best.
smart-ass talking mouse.
Me.
Promises.
A smart-ass talking mouse. We might get him a
You
mouse.
like
You
that.
never know. Okay. So here's the detective sitting at
Go for it.
his desk. There are dog-eared copies of books reportedly written by the subject piled in an uneven column at one end of the desk. The detective himself, it should be reported, is an imposingly rotund, somewhat grotesque, barrel-chested man, possibly an athlete's physique when younger, long since gone to pot, with an enormous pockmarked nose, ruddy complexion, thin lips, and baggy eyes. How old is he? Old enough. Old enough to know this entire case is a sham and a colossal waste of police time and taxpayers' money, and is pissing him off mightily. Fine. He's already voiced his personal opinions several times over on the matter, and it's fallen on deaf ears. Nothing more to be done along those lines. That particular ship has sailed, and bon voyage. Fine, whatever. He's been given the task, so he might as well put his shoulder to the wheel and get down to it. Begin at the beginning, he says in a strained sigh. He rustles a sheet of paper from a pile and holds it in front of his face. He reads to himself in a low whisper. Bolaño died in Blanes, Spain. Blanes, he repeats. Blanes. He stretches his lips in order to exaggerate the place name and goes on to wax poetic about it, using a description, in all likelihood, lifted from a travel ad he'd seen somewhere in the distant past. Gateway to the Costa Brava, home to fireworks displays and botanical gardens. Christ, he thinks, it should have ended there. He should have ended there. What the fuck is he doing here in Santiago, home to slums, earthquakes, smog, air and water pollution, spread out like a fucking paper cadaver on the top of a desk? He lights a cigarette from the still-burning butt retrieved from the lumpy green clay pottery ashtray, obviously, likely, made by a child in a primary school art class. Possibly, probably, the detective's own child, one imagines, in earlier, younger years. Inhales, tilts his head, exhales. Yes, it's still a time and place when a person can smoke inside a building and not be chastised as a social pariah or shot as an eco-terrorist. Like straight out of a movie. One of those movies, you know, faded, flickery, grainy, what is now idealized and revered as film noir. And the smoke rises and hangs sluggish in the thick, unmoving air and drifts blue-gray within the harsh glow of the ceiling's fixtures, double row of fluorescent tubes. Ruptures in the ceiling plaster guide the eyes horizontally, then vertically downward at the joint. Grimy, water-damaged wallpaper lifts and peels, paint cracks, cobwebs cling to corners. There's a not thin layer of greasy dust on everything. The idle blades of a ceiling fan are stained yellow and insect-encrusted. The sum total of decay and decrepitude creates a certain atmosphere of bygone theatricality. Words spring to mind. Words such as dame, gat, gams, Roscoe, clip joint, screw, gunsel, button man. Or phrases such as, I jammed the Roscoe in the twist button and said, shut your yaps, sweetheart, or I squirt lead. Or the flim flammer jumped in the flivver and faded. Very romantic if that's your bag. Otherwise, the place is a first-class dump. Who said that, he ponders, for no particular good reason except maybe procrastination? Who said, what a dump? Besides Liz Taylor and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, one moving referencing another elbow to elbow until fiction becomes uncomfortably close to fact. He gives his forehead a rub, reshifts his attention to the sheet of paper in his hand, and continues to mutter words that he lifts from the page. Roberto Bolaño was born in Santiago, Chile in 1953. Right, he goes. Ha! He grew up in Chile, Los Angeles in the Biobío region, Valparaiso on the coast, Viña del Mar, Santiago, and Mexico City. He is the author of the novel The Savage Detectives, which received the Premio Heralde and the Romulo Gallegos Prize, and 2666, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award. He died at age 50. The detective rolls his shoulders, groans, mumbles to himself, as if, he goes, what a crock. The prizes are bogus. No one's ever heard of them. As for The Savage Detectives, it wasn't even about detectives, so far as I recall. What was it about? It's been years since I flipped through the bastard. No fucking clue. Not detectives, that's for damn sure. Not a detective story like I'd ever read before or since. No how, no way. And I've read more than my share, buddy boy. So, meanwhile, the city workers are on strike. And so there are mice and rats infiltrating the city. Mice are overrunning the police station. And our detective is treating one of them as a pet. And he calls it El Topo. And El Topo means the mole.
Yeah.
And a mole in the police station, right? And it's also a movie by Alejandro Jodorowsky. Anyway, yeah, and the film was from 1970. It was described as a Mexican acid surreal Western movie. And it's pretty crazy. For those of us who can't go out and rent movies anymore, it's tough to find any of these things. So anyway, our detective is gathering up the usual suspects, and he gets one of his informants, a female. She's a prostitute and a drug user, but also an informant on his side. So he gets her into his office to ask her a few questions about Bolaño, even though he knows, she won't be able to tell him anything. But it's just part of the roundup. So there are people waiting outside to come in and be interrogated. And I thought I'd just read a little bit about her because she comes up later on in the book as a ghost. So she's, where are we? Here we are. She goes into the office and she sits down, makes herself very comfortable, and a mouse comes up and she gives it a little kick. Ames Gray, House May, she tells it. The detective perches on the edge of his desk next to her and leans his face close to hers. Comfortable, he says, less as a question than to get her attention. So, she grins and pops her gum. What's up, Doc, she says. You ever hear of a guy, a writer-poet type named Roberto Bolaño? She cocks her head and pokes her chin with a file. A poet? She's suitably incredulous. Does the cartoon jaw-drop routine, stops chewing her gum? Serious? The detective doesn't flinch. Can't say as I have, no. What's he done? He died, comes the reply. Flat, calm, and assured. Oh, that a crime now? Shit, next you know we'll be arrested for breaking wind in public. She looks at the detective, who still doesn't bat an eye. I mean, you kidding me or what? She grins wider, doesn't speak, like she's unsure, like she's waiting for the other shoe to fall or something. So, you never heard of him. He folds his arm across his chest. She swings her head side to side. No, should I? Probably not. Thing is, we're shaking the bushes, which means people will start crawling out from under their rocks, maybe even talk. Even if they don't know what they're talking about, if you hear something, let me know. He hops off the desk, light on his feet for a big man, and motions with a sweeping arm toward the door. She doesn't budge. Let you know? Let you know what, she asks. I don't know, he answers. Whatever. He continues to invite her to leave. That it then? Her face puckers into a question mark, a very confused question mark. You're not going to put the squeeze on me, knock me around a bit, drag me out in cuffs? He looks at her like, this isn't that kind of situation. He wants to tell her it's no situation. To his mind, honestly, it's a total waste of time and energy, a wild fucking goose chase. But, listen, you got to do something. I can't just walk out of here. What'll people think? Certain people, if you get my drift. I got my reputation to think of, my cred. He nods. Oh, yeah, right, your cred. Besides, you think those two will talk? She jabs with her nail file toward the door. if you don't put on some kind of convincing display. I mean, that's why I'm here, partly, yeah? Fear of God and whatever. He groans, takes a deep, resigned breath. Yeah, I hear you, okay, and leans his knuckles on the desk. He bangs the wood with a meaty fist. Listen to me, you skinny black bitch. Puta, he shouts, you stipe coño. He slaps one palm loudly, fiercely against the other. The woman responds with a shriek of pain. Oh, stop, she whines. Don't hit me, please. He hollers above her. Oh, stop when you tell me what I want to know. Slut, smack, palm against palm. The woman bursting into tears, begging, all right, pig, I'll tell you, just lay off the rough stuff. That's better, he says. That's more like it. He bangs the desk with a fist. What else? The woman mumbles on incoherently for a moment or two. Rhubarb. Then whimpers and blows her nose. The detective waits for the theatrics to end, checks his watch, rolls his hands like, come on. Done. He grabs her by the arm and shoves her roughly out the door. She performs a very convincing stumble and falls to her knees, covers her cheek with a hand, gives the pair sitting outside a rather histrionic double take, scrambles to her feet, and flees the scene as if in fear for her life. And don't leave town, he warns behind her. I'll bust your ass. He looms over the seated man and woman who are visibly shaken. He has a reputation as a no-nonsense, take-no-prisoners, mean and vicious hombre. Okay, he grits his teeth. Which one of you worthless pieces of trash is next? The two lock eye to eye. After you. No. After you. Okay, thank you.
So you may know Riverside Drive, Maiden Lane, and Prospect Avenue. And the fourth one is coming out in April, is that right?
Fingers crossed. Yeah, working on it, yeah.
Okay. So Michael is very much after our hearts here at Biblioasis, has experience as a bookseller and publisher as well. And we are really excited to welcome you back to your hometown.
Thank you. This Prospect Avenue is the third book in the series Border City Blues. And every book in the series has had its own sort of flavor, even though it's had more or less the same characters, protagonists, supporting cast. And I say cast because it moves a lot like a film series or a television series. It's very much written with dialogue in mind and screen in mind, and very cinematic, and that's kind of how I imagine things and how I work. Prospect Avenue, this one, has vaudeville in it. It has original songs, thank you. It has a character who has had a brief experience in Hollywood and had some experience working in vaudeville in Detroit. And she's come to Windsor, and she's working with my protagonist, Jack McCloskey, who is he's diversifying his interests. He's a bootlegger. And he's been told he should diversify his interests a little bit. And so one of the ways he's diversifying his interest is by opening a nightclub. And it's dry. It's straight. And so I researched this property, and it's on Olette Avenue. It was on Olette Avenue. And it was an auditorium where they rehearsed and practiced dance shows, music shows. And so he acquires that and has it refinished by a designer working for Albert Kahn in Detroit. So he's got that going on. And he's also got a lot of other problems apart from PTSD. He's a First World War veteran, he's a bootlegger, he's a career criminal, and he's a little unhinged at times. So what he's trying to do is he's diversifying, as I said. And he has a business, a sort of front operation. And it's on Mercer Avenue. And I looked this up, and it's Border Cities Wrecking and Salvage. Yeah. And what he has done is he's created a compound where it's basically a machine. And he has the liquor downstairs, and he has parts flowing in and out on the main floor, visible, and everything gets turned around and turned around, and he ships everything out, and he packages all of the booze in car parts and ships them out. And that's not unusual, not unheard of. So that's his front operation. On top of all of that, he has this crew of his who are trying to one-up each other. He has a first lieutenant, Shorty. He has a chief engineer, Mud Thompson. And he has some other characters who are also competing and trying to make their way and find their way and secure themselves within this very shady, and that's the name of the club, operation. Mm-hmm. And so it gets a bit complicated sometimes. And they have to deal with Jack's personality and his own issues. And sometimes they don't know how to deal with that. So this is a situation where what's happening is, actually, I don't have to explain anything else. I'll just launch into it, and then if you have questions, I can answer questions. This is a chapter in the novel. I just regret, I don't regret, but it's unfortunate that this chapter doesn't include the women that are in the novel, in the series, because I've heard a lot of very positive reaction about the women. They're very positive, very strong women, and so if you want to learn more about them, I guess you have to read everything else. But anyway, unfortunately, this doesn't include that. Business was booming at Border City's Wrecking and Salvage, and that could make for some interesting challenges, as in the boys were having difficulty balancing supplies of liquor and auto parts. In any given week, it could flow either way. Their preference was to have more parts than booze, otherwise their front organization would start looking like just that. We've got a cellar full of rye, we have to move, said Shorty. We can't just have it lying around like this, not when we got customers waiting and cops sniffing around like they have been lately. I don't know what's been up, what's brought them by, but all of a sudden we have to deal with this. We're probably just being added to their rotation, said Gorski. We need more parts, and quality stuff this time. Quality stuff, said Mud. What quality stuff? Mud and Shorty were facing off, as they often did, from opposite ends of the long workbench. Because our contacts are telling us that when we're shipping crap parts, it looks a bit too much like packing material, which we all know it pretty much is, but that's not the point. So what do they want? No Fords, said Shorty. At least not for a little while. They want to see some high-end stuff in the mix, and newish. And where are we supposed to get that? Said Gorski. Yeah, said Mud. Buy the cars off the dealer's lot? There go the profits. So you know, we won't be going down the road for that. Then what? Shorty was thinking, pacing about the greasy workshop, and then his dashboard lit up. No. We go to the roadhouses, the racetracks, and look for Michigan plates. No, forget the racetracks. We have to do it at night. And when a car gets reported stolen, where's one of the first places the cops are going to look, said Gorski. We bring the catch straight back here. No joyrides. And we chop it up. Pronto. Maybe we can count on them not reporting it if they're just coming staggering out of a roadhouse smelling like a distillery. Mud, you know how to high-end a Studebaker? With my eyes tied behind my back. It was no secret that the majority of auto thefts were perpetrated by Detroit area auto workers. Boys with their eyes fixed on shiny objects. All they needed was 1 minute and a few inches of wire. Almost none were stolen for keeps. Many were resold. The rest, well, joyrides and chop shops. All right, said Shorty. We'll leave here at 10. Gorski, you stay here and have the fence out back ready for when you hear us come knocking. Shorty and Mud decided to try their luck first at the Island View Hotel. They would take Riverside Drive east to the edge of the city, make their score, and then wind their way back into the city, first through the side roads and then the back streets into the city's heart. There'd be no speeding. The parking lot was jammed with vehicles large and small, old and new. Mud felt like a kid in a candy store. They didn't see any Studebakers, but they did spot a sweet-looking Packard with Michigan plates parked near the drive. Yeah, said Shorty. That one. You think you could do it? Mud was rubbing his chin. This year's model. Let me see. Shorty watched his back. All the action seemed to be inside. No one out for some fresh air, no kissing parties going on, and no security detail. That might change after tonight, thought Shorty. It took a minute, but as soon as Mud got the engine going, he didn't hesitate. Settling in and motoring it as smoothly and quietly as he could out of the space, Shorty approached. Mud gave him the thumbs up, and the former jumped back in his own vehicle and followed Mud out of the lot and onto the drive. Mud then geared up, lit a cigarette. I'm sorry I have to do this. He's talking to the car. He's feeling responsible, and he's very sensitive to what he's about to do. It was dawn. McCloskey had been out all night but wanted to check in on things before cruising back to his apartment and sleeping the morning away. What the? We scored some parts, said Shorty, smiling. The kind of stuff the clients had been asking for. He and Gorski were standing there in their dirty shirt sleeves, each with a wrench in hand, sweat streaming down their grease-smudged faces. Mud Thompson was the only one of them who had his own pair of overalls and looked, as always, like he was trying to keep his cool. The parts were strewn about the floor and hanging from the rafters on hooks. Auto carnage. A butcher's shop cutting up rubber, glass, lead, and steel. What was it? Said McCloskey. A Packard.
Yes.
Smiled Shorty. Where'd you get it? The parking lot at the Island View. You stole a brand new car? McCloskey was examining the parts like a meat inspector, wondering why he had a bad feeling about this. This can't be all of it. Where's the rest? The less easily identifiable parts are hidden in the yard, said Shorty. And the panels, bumpers, the exterior parts are in the cellar. Are the crates ready? Ready, said Shorty. How many? 6, maybe 7, depending. All right, said McCloskey. Let's get that ride out the door and all these parts you can fit in the crates. Hang on. A few hours later, McCloskey came storming back into the shop. He unfolded the newspaper he had in his hand and, flipping to the third page, said, "Did you guys say you got that car at the Island View?" "Yeah," said Mud. "Do you know who it belonged to?" asked McCloskey, looking at it from the newspaper. "No, who?" said Shorty. "A Packard executive's son." McCloskey was searching the column. "Here, it says right here." The boys were trying to digest all of this. It was already causing Shorty some pain. Gorski was the first to speak. "Does he want his car back?" McCloskey almost hit him on the nose with the rolled-up newspaper. "No, he wants you to send him the odometer reading. Of course he wants his fucking car back." He admitted to coming out of Windsor Roadhouse, a well-known joint, asked Shorty. He admitted to meeting with his real estate brokers about buying some property on Riverside Drive, said McCloskey. "Shit," said Gorski. "What are we going to do?" "Did you ship those crates off?" "Yeah," said Shorty. Started to look a little queasy. There turned out to be 7. "A lot left, I bet," said McCloskey. "A fair bit." "Well, that's a fair bit of trouble then, isn't it, boys? Hey. What did you do with the seats?" "They're in my living room," said Gorski. This time McCloskey did hit him with the rolled-up newspaper. "At least we moved out all the rye, Jack. And the Packard came free of charge." McCloskey glanced sideways at Shorty, resisting the temptation to slap him with the newspaper as well, because that wouldn't look good in front of Gorski and Mud, who he outranked. "Let's hope it stays that way," said McCloskey. "Mud, did you claim your trophy?" Mud hesitated. "Yeah. Find out where this guy lives, and mail it to him.
Snail mail.
Mud collected license plates.
Wow.
We're not pulling anything like this again, right? We were just improvising, Jack. I want to make all those exterior parts downstairs, everything you couldn't fit in all of those crates, disappear. Here's an idea. Tonight, dump those parts off at Windsor Auto Wreck. Make it fast, don't be sloppy. Bring a pair of bolt cutters. And a stake in case they have a dog in the yard. When you're done, phone in an anonymous tip to Windsor Police. They'll do, said Shorty. McCloskey stepped out. Shorty was left wondering where Jack's head was right now. Was it that big of a deal? Then he thought, maybe it wasn't Jack, maybe it was him. Maybe he was misreading things. No more of this just-in-time delivery crap, Shorty said to the room. Let's start stockpiling parts right now. Get Lincoln Jefferson out scavenging some more, but let them know they have to keep it clean or they're out of work. Pay them by the pound of scrap. By the end of the week, I want to be tripping over auto parts just to get the front door. The place emptied, and the crew went to work. Shorty rested his hands against the edge of the workbench and leaned against it, tired, his nose burning from the fumes of the place, his mind just as cluttered. He bunched up the newspaper in his hands and threw it against the wall. What do you want, Jack?
I have a question for both of you as writers of books that feature detectives, that feature crime and detection. I'm curious to know about, I guess maybe the procedural and plotting aspects of how you plan and shape these novels. Like, to what extent? I don't know. Tell me about how you. It seems like a real challenge to me, right? To write about a detective figuring out a crime. So I'm curious to know how you wrap your head around that. How you think about that when you're writing.
Good.
I think of my books mainly as crime fiction, though embedded in them are two characters, Detective Campbell and the forensics doctor Lafayette.
Wow.
And so I have them, I sort of thread inside the novel them with a case that sometimes overlaps. It can't just be a gratuitous sort of, I'm going to just throw this thing in. What I tend to do though with them is I start with a body and I work backwards. So I start with a body and a crime scene, and I just keep working backwards. And how is it discovered? How is the body discovered?
So you ask yourself, how did this thing end up here?
How does this happen? And then they come forward. And then I also think about how one of my favorite crime fiction television series, is Homicide. And they had this board, and there were all the detectives and all the crimes, and how many crimes weren't solved. And they were in the red or in the black. And I marvel at how many times a crime wasn't solved or just kept rolling along. So in Prospect Avenue, I have an unsolved crime. And I thought, I'm going to leave it like that. And I'm going to keep it rolling along, and they're going to figure it out because they're going to have other files at the same time that they're working on. And that's I think that's more realistic as far as actual day-to-day crime detection and detective work goes. That things aren't solved just like that. There are no clean endings, and sometimes just no endings. There are unsolved cases, there are cold cases, and they come back to haunt you sometimes years later.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that really in crime, like, because it's been over the years. I mean, you watch so many, you read so many, whatever. But the main thing is delaying the end. So how do you find ways to delay the end? What impasses do you give? Because, in your head, you know how it's going to end, right? Everybody knows how it's going to end. Somebody's going to find, or it's going to be a cold case where they don't find out. But either way, you're following the steps of these people. So you have to put impasses in the way to keep it going long enough. And I just finished writing a novel that's an updated version of Hamlet. And I have the Hamlet character watching reruns of TV of things like Murdoch and who are the others? God, the female Angela Lansbury.
Yes.
Murder, She Wrote?
Yeah, Murder, She Wrote. So he's watching them, and he says, okay, they're always like this. You always have to suspect somebody, and that's your, and then the person, and then later on, all these people get eliminated until you go back to a person that was there at the beginning, and that's the guilty person, right? And then in my story, I of course have to change that because he's been watching all of these, and he's got it all figured out. It's the brother who's killed my father. He's got it all worked out in his head. He just needs to gather the information, and then in the end, it turns out to be something else. So, but it's always that delay, I think, is important in how you go about doing it.
I have one more question, if that's all right, if you would indulge me. So both of you write fiction that is engaging with some historical fact, right? You're writing about fiction about a guy who's an actual historical author. You're writing about a real place that really was a hotbed of rum runners. Can you talk to us a little bit about researching and how you craft fiction that has some basis in historical fact?
It's really nerdy.
Nice.
I go to Google newspaper archives, and they have copies, digital copies, not like facsimiles of original editions of the Border City Star. And I can read daily editions of the Border City Star on the internet for free. Yeah. And I go to the front page, but I also go to, and I mentioned this in, I think, the passage I read, it was called The Third Page. The page was The Third Page. And there was a crime column there. And all of the court proceedings, arrests, crimes and misdemeanors were all listed there. So just the minor stuff there, but also just the pages that told me what was a crime or misdemeanor in 1923 and what was going on. Oh, they were robbing the coins out of milk bottles on front porches. Really, stuff like that. Not to mention all the DUIs going on, like constantly. And the big projects, the big smuggling projects going on. So I would just come up with a storyline and then hang it on actual events to make sure that it had a realistic feel and that it didn't sound like I was just riding along on some imaginary journey of my own. I always try to work in real names and politicians, police officers, where people lived, and I obsess over, I have to know where every character lived, what their apartment looked like, what their house looked like, and I look at fire insurance maps. And I have to know, was it a two-story house, was it brick, was it wood panel? And even though it might not all make it into the story, into the book, in order to create them in my mind, I have to know everything about them, even like where they went to school, what their names were, what their kids were, if they had kids, and I have to know all that stuff. And then I feel comfortable myself, because I'm just this weirdo, writing about them and creating them. And I think it's kind of a respect for people in this community, and just making it as realistic as possible and bringing absolutely every flavor it possibly can to it.
How does that mesh with your experience?
Yeah, mine's more fictional, metafictional, whatever, because I start with that key idea. Well, I started with the key idea that Bolaño was a real person, but I think, as I said, he was himself a kind of chameleon, and created false information about himself. So it kind of left it open for me to take what I wanted and use what I want. So yeah, I had to go and look about information about Santiago and Valparaiso to see what those towns are like, so that I can put that in the book. But when it came to the actual characters, I could pretty much do what I want. And the fact that he was involved with or enjoyed watching American movies, a lot of the allusions in the book are to pieces of fiction. So you know, in the movie El Topo, and there's a great reference when he starts talking to the mouse, who takes on a Ralph Meeker character. And they talk about a movie that Ralph Meeker was in, and the Ralph Meeker movie is, if you've never seen it, is just the craziest. They want to do a science fiction, film noir, fantasy, whatever. They wanted everything all in this one movie, and so the mouse talks about it. So it's good that I can take characters that are not real and give them information that is also, you know, it's just Hollywood bullshit, but it becomes real. And I think in a lot of my writing, I do a lot of references to pop culture, that lines like, play it again, Sam. It wasn't said in the movie. He said, play it again.
Right.
Are you feeling lucky, punk? He says, how are you, punk? Whatever. Are you feeling lucky? But over the years, it all gets put together until this becomes the reality.
Sure.
So I like stuff like that. So I like doing that in my writing, creating reality where in fact it's not real at all. Yeah. But things like, you know, if people said to me, that's not San Diego, I'd be in trouble. So you do have to, you know, when it's a real place, you have to do something real about that.
So, thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.